What's up, everybody? With recent talk of the Fox acquisition and how we won't be seeing the X-Men for at least the next 5 years, I wanted to focus on a team we might be getting a lot sooner, the Fantastic Four. Now, I've heard a lot of theories about how to make a compelling story and what characters to focus on, and how to introduce them into the MCU and casting in general. Shout out to Patrick Willem and Comics Explained. But today I'm going to be doing something a little different. I'm going to be combining those theories along with some of my own ideas to get a big picture or an outline or a general plot on what a Fantastic Four movie could actually look like. Before getting into the meat of it, allow me to address a few key points so that you guys can follow along with my thought process and understand why I made some of the distinct choices I made. Oh, and before continuing, major MCU spoilers. If you guys haven't caught up with the films up to Captain Marvel yet, go watch that, come back, watch this video, and tell me what you think. A huge factor in this video is what I would consider actually possible for the first movie based on Marvel's previous very careful ways of going about their story arcs, especially with some characters that may have been misrepresented pre-MCU. Marvel doesn't just throw their big players out there. They focus on the heroes first and foremost, before venturing into the grand scale of things. And for that reason, the main villains for the first Fantastic Four movie will not include Galactus or Doom. Although they absolutely deserve to be in the franchise, Galactus is simply too big a character, and Doom has been used twice already. In order to get a fresh feel for these characters, I feel like some new characters should be involved. Now, that's not to say that Doom won't be their first big real villain on Earth, but this movie is not going to have a core main villain. Now, I know that sounds crazy at first, but hear me out. The Fantastic Four movie would be a space adventure film where they crash land on an unknown planet with newfound powers and must learn what it means to be a family, the ones you choose and the ones you don't, to find a way back home. This is for a few reasons. Number one, it allows us to focus on the characters themselves. Number two, the Fantastic Four are first scientists and space explorers before they're heroes. And number three, exploring space builds for some really great world building and tying into the history of the MCU, establishing the Four as relevant people in the grander scheme and not just Earth. Now that I've covered my bases, let's get into the actual plot. So the movie would start with the introduction of an organization that the Fantastic Four are already an incredibly talented team in. Now, which organization this is depends a bit on where people are after the events of Endgame, but there are basically two ways to go about this. Either, after the defeat of Thanos, the world has been put in somewhat of a galactic spotlight, with new threats becoming aware of our existence. Because of this, S.W.O.R.D. was formed. For those of you who don't know what S.W.O.R.D. is, in the comics they're essentially S.H.I.E.L.D., but they deal with situations outside of Earth. S.W.O.R.D. could be run by either Nick Fury, Maria Hill, or Carol Danvers, or even a new player depending on where everyone is in Endgame. The other way to do it would be after Endgame, Tony Stark, knowing he wouldn't always be around, formed a think tank of incredibly capable people to combat these kinds of Thanos-level situations in the future, called the Future Foundation. For the sake of continuity for now, we'll go with S.W.O.R.D. So the Fantastic Four are a distinguished team in S.W.O.R.D.'s Science and Space Exploration Division. Also, from the get-go, their unit would already be called the Fantastic Four, as a sort of nickname that you would see in a military squad. Their uniforms would also look similar to one of their costumes in the comics, with maybe a patch of their unit on the side of their arm or something. Anyways, because they're a very capable team, they're given some leeway. So they go out on a mission or exploring, and they go too far, and through a series of events they end up going directly through a quantum energy field and getting sucked into a wormhole. They get spat out on the other side and crash land on an unknown, mostly deserted planet. This is where we would get a chance to establish their powers and a little of what they can do. And Reed would be stretching a little bit, Ben is freaking out over the fact that he's a rock now, Sue believes she can only turn invisible, and Johnny Storm is slightly amused by his power. After a while, they meet a guy named Ivan Kragoff. In the comics, Ivan Kragoff is a villain known as the Red Ghost. He's a Soviet scientist that has 3 apes that are his buddies and have the ability to go intangible and phase through things. It's super weird. So they meet Ivan, and he tells them his story about how after Thanos came down to Earth and put Earth in the cosmic spotlight, people realized the importance of space, and it pretty much kicked off the second space race. He explains to them that he was a cosmonaut in the early stages of the second space race between nations. His ship malfunctioned or he messed up and ended up in the exact same situation as the Four are in currently. Similarly to the first space race, monkeys were used as astronauts, and he happened to be teamed with monkeys. It's alluded to that after the crash, he had to survive by eating their rations. The Four then informed him that the second space race was a really huge deal, but it didn't last long, as the United Nations quickly formed S.W.O.R.D. and brought together the nations. So after some time, they decide to work together to get off this planet, and they conclude that the only way to go is back through the wormhole. So they start fixing the ship, Johnny mainly because he's an excellent mechanic, along with Ivan and Ben, although I imagine Ben moping around not doing much. After being on this deserted planet for a while, they become suspicious of Ivan, so while Johnny and Ben are with Ivan and the ship is near completion, Reed and Sue go to check out his ship and see what he's hiding. On the side of the ship, the words "The Red Ghost" are inscribed. As they make their way in, they see all kinds of formulas on the walls, and here they discover two things. Ivan was also affected by the quantum energy field, and he has powers very similar to Ghost in Ant-Man and Wasp, and that he's also fading away. The second being that he's been doing these formulas for months, maybe even years now, and he's come to the conclusion that the wormhole is simply too unpredictable and it'll most likely kill them going through it. Upon this discovery, they rush back to the ship knowing that Ivan feels he needs to go now before it's too late and he fades away completely. Simultaneously, Ivan tries to secretly launch the ship but gets caught. Johnny and Ben are able to stall him long enough for Reed and Sue to barely make it back on before Ivan takes off in a desperate attempt to survive. Eventually, it gets to all four of them trying to fight him, but the fight comes to a stalemate, with them not being able to take him out. Just as they are about to go through the wormhole, they are all together in the front of the ship. Sue freaks out and puts a force field around them, Ivan being outside the force field. As the ship goes through the wormhole, Ivan, being towards the back, is sucked out into space along with the back of the ship. This is where we get to the second planet. They get popped out in a random spot in the universe, and with a lot of their ship destroyed, they see a planet in the distance with ships around it, some coming towards them. They're picked up by these ships, and they bring them to their planet. The planet is green and lush, and we found out that it is the new planet of the Skrulls. They've gone to the far corners of the galaxy. They've built a beautifully advanced, decently sized civilization, and we find out that the new leader of the Skrull is recently Talos' daughter. The four tell them that they're from Earth, and because of past events, they're extremely welcoming. They tell the Fantastic Four that they will help in any way they can, but they're currently in the far reaches of the universe, and without a jump point or light speed, the only way to get back to the other side of the universe is to go through the negative zone. For those of you who don't know what the negative zone is the dimension that Reed discovers that becomes closely associated with the Fantastic Four. Various enemies, such as the Annihilation Wave, come from the negative zone, an army of creatures that basically destroys everything in their path. The Skrull tell them that they know two things about the negative zone. The negative zone works spatially opposite of our dimension, and the entrance is basically like a screen door. Physical things can't get in or out, but things such as gravity, radiation, and various gases are able to leak through. If Reed can help them build a device to get through the negative zone using the Skrull's data, the idea is that they could get through the entrance, and because the negative zone works opposite of our dimension spatially, if they exit the negative zone via a nearby tear or other entry point, they will end up on the other side of the universe, closer to a jump point near Earth, and be able to get home. This takes some time, so while they're here, the Fantastic Four have a chance to get a better grip on their powers. While this is going on, the Skrulls get attacked by what seems to be a rogue faction. This is where we learn about Kl'rt. For those of you who don't know who this is, Kl'rt is a very capable Skrull that is a longtime enemy of the Fantastic Four, who eventually becomes the Super Skrull after going through extreme experimentation. In this movie, Kl'rt is the other side of the Skrull, where some found peace in finally having a safe home, others are still affected and want revenge against the Kree for taking everything from them. Kl'rt is the leader of this side. His parents were killed in the war, and he doesn't view this empty place as his home. He sees it as retreat. With the recent death of Talos, leadership among the Skrulls has begun to fracture. After the initial attack, Kl'rt's forces retreat, but they learn of the Fantastic Four's existence on the planet. He views them as outsiders, of course, and they discover the massive amount of quantum energy the Fantastic Four are giving off. It is revealed that they have been running experiments combining their shapeshifting abilities with quantum energy to make Super Skrulls, but because of the unpredictable nature, it can be very dangerous. For example, you could end up fading away. However, if they can collect enough data on the Fantastic Four, they can pinpoint their powers and create a Super Skrull. So some time has passed, the device is ready, and the team is ready to take off. Because the Skrull have such a deep knowledge about the shape-shifting clothing, this would be a really cool moment where the Fantastic Four get their spacesuits that closely resemble their look in the comics. Right, so as they are ready to take off, Kl'rt's forces attack once again, knowing that they don't have much time before the Fantastic Four leave forever. This creates important character moments where Johnny and Sue decide to stay, help, and fight, while Reed and the Thing just want to go home. So Johnny and Sue go help Talos' daughter fight off Kl'rt. The three of them are able to hold them off, but can't push them back. Talos' daughter assures them that this is Skrull business and they should go with their friends back home while they can. Johnny and Sue contemplate this. Meanwhile, Reed and Ben are having a heart-to-heart, realizing they need to go help their friends. Both groups make the decision that whatever they do, they'd rather do it together, and just as Johnny and Sue hesitate at leaving, Reed and Ben jump into the action and storm the lines. This is the moment where the four of them really become the team we know. Johnny ends up getting somewhat injured, and Ben blames himself for not having been there in the first place. But overall, they manage to beat Kl'rt back enough together to feel like the peaceful Skrull have won the battle. So they head to the ship and take off into space after saying goodbye. The team sets their sights on the gateway of the negative zone. This gives the team a moment to reflect and talk before their final destination. They come up on the negative zone entrance, which looks like a nebulous tear in the fabric of the universe. As they push through the entrance, the device seems to work, and at first they celebrate. Then they're amazed by what they see. Extremely distorted barren wasteland and massive upside-down cities. Visually, it's extremely mind-warping, such as we've seen in the past MCU movies with other dimensions. But they manage to focus and pinpoint an exit. Just past that exit, they see a massive cloud coming towards them. As they near the exit, and the cloud nears them, they realize this is not a cloud, it's the annihilation wave. They get caught in the middle of it, and are being slowed down by the amount of creatures they're crashing into. Reed takes charge and directs everyone on what to do. Sue puts up a force field around the ship, Johnny's told to go with Reed, and Ben, you drive. I like the idea that one of the things Ben needs to work on is finesse. And unlike the Hulk, his personal wins don't involve smashing stuff, but are in the little things. So Reed asks Johnny if he's okay with this. They have a quick moment, then Johnny jumps out of the ship and yells, "Flame on," incinerating everything around him and propels the ship forward. Sue focuses her force field on the front of the ship, and we see the annihilation wave bouncing off right as they're nearing the exit. Johnny, slowly running out of gas, gets hit by one of the creatures and is knocked out, and almost instantaneously, Ben jumps out to grab him. Making up for not being there for his friend, he takes massive damage as he covers Johnny. Almost with the same quickness, Reed stretches out and grabs the thing. Reed pulls them in as they jet through the exit. With Johnny and the thing passed out, Sue and Reed are barely conscious. As Johnny and Thing wake up, they realize they're on a familiar ship, a Sword ship. Reed fills them in that they were barely able to make it out, and Sword was close enough to retrieve them at that point. Our heroes finally made it back. As they finally get back to Earth, to their surprise, there's a massive welcoming party. The fact that the world's greatest science team went missing in space was huge news, and they were welcomed back as heroes. This is the beginning of the Fantastic Four. And there the story ends. Oh, and of course, the after credits scene, where we see Kl'rt finally complete his experiment. He comes out of the chamber as we see the rise of the Super Skrull. Well, there it is, guys, the first Fantastic Four movie. I tried to create an outline while having time for great character development and sticking true to who they are in the comics, while tying in some MCU lore to further solidify them in the MCU without taking away from their personal story. But thanks, guys. I worked really hard on this. I have some ideas about a sequel, including Doom as the main character. So if you guys want to see that, let me know in the comment section. Thank you and have a great day. Recording? Hey guys, thanks for sticking around. I added my dog in this shot so you'll subliminally associate me with pets and subconsciously like me more.